Right, so we're excited about tonight's panel regarding reflections on women's leadership in the animal rights and vegan movement. We have 6 awesome panelists tonight, and I'll start out by introducing Jodi Graber with the organization Jewish Veg. So Jodi uses she, her pronouns and brings her passion for health, well-being, and her Jewish heritage to her work as East Coast engagement manager for Jewish Veg. Her love of dance blossomed into a 20-plus career in performing arts administration, first as the manager of Bill T. Jones / Arnie Zane Dance Company, then as director of marketing and public relations for Alvin Ailey American Dance Theater. In 2007, Jodi began her studies at the Institute for Integrative Nutrition, or IIN, and is a certified health coach. While studying at IIN, she learned more about a veg lifestyle and realized that for health and moral reasons, she needed to change her eating habits. Once she understood Judaism's teachings regarding the care and treatment of animals, the choice to be vegan was solidified. And she has been working at Jewish Veg since 2019. Welcome, Jodi.
Thank you very much. Thanks for having me.
I can introduce Stephanie. Stephanie Redcross is a vegan mainstream. Inspiring and supporting vegans in business is all part of a day's work for Stephanie Redcross West, founder and managing director of Vegan Mainstream, and using she, her pronouns. Since she started Vegan Mainstream in 2009, Stephanie has been blazing a trail as a leader in the vegan business world. As a result, Vegan Mainstream is known today as an invaluable resource for vegan entrepreneurs and business owners, providing results-oriented business coaching, marketing strategy training, and unique online courses with live support. Stephanie and Vegan Mainstream have established an impressive track record of helping numerous vegan professionals launch, scale, and maintain successful businesses and organizations. Welcome, Stephanie.
Thank you so much for having me. Hello, everyone.
I'd like to introduce and welcome Nina King. So Nina King, who uses she, her pronouns, is the co-founder and secretary of the Christian Animal Rights Association, which she formed with her spouse, Matthew, in 2019. She is a proud dog mom to Ripley and Zira. She has been an animal rights activist and vegan since 2016. Nina is also a registered nurse at a local primary care physician's office. Welcome, Nina.
Thanks, happy to be here. And I can introduce Aimee. Aimee Douglas is with Humane Action Pittsburgh. She's the director of Compassionate Living, and Aimee leads the Compassionate Living team, which works to end suffering of the most abused animals, those which are used for food. This is achieved by partnering with animal, environmental, and health groups to encourage them to go meatless for their events. She also authors the HAP blog and has been a volunteer with HAP since 2018, tabling at her first events in 2019. Aimee works in the healthcare industry and has a bachelor's degree in creative writing from the University of Pittsburgh at Johnstown and a master's degree in communications with a healthcare focus from Southern New Hampshire University. She lives in Penn Hills with her husband and her 3 dogs. Welcome, Aimee.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Awesome. And we'd like to introduce Naijha Wright-Brown. Welcome, Naijha. Naijha uses she, her pronouns as the 2021 Baltimore Business Journal Enterprising Women of Excellence honoree. A native New Yorker raised in the South Bronx, Naijha is a people person and loves to make connections. Naijha was introduced to gardening, farming, environmentalism, sustainability, and the basics of eating healthy while spending summers in Massachusetts as a teenager. Naijha has an MBA in business from the University of Phoenix and is a successful serial entrepreneur. The thought of owning a restaurant never crossed her mind until she relocated to Baltimore in 2005 and met her fellow Verizon Wireless coworker, now husband, Gregory Brown. Naijha is a partner and the marketing director for the Land of Kush, Vegan Soul Bistro, and co-creator of Vegan Soul Fest and Maryland Vegan Restaurant Week. She's the executive director of the Black Veg Society, a nonprofit organization whose mission is to educate predominantly Black, Indigenous, and people of color or BIPOC communities on the benefits of holistic living, the plant-based diet, and veganism. Naijha also has a digital talk show called Naijha Speaks that helps people on a mission to find their vegan soul. Welcome, Naijha. Awesome.
Thanks for having me. Looking forward to it.
Great. Likewise.
And I'd like to welcome and introduce Deanna Meyler with the Peace Advocacy Network. So Deanna Meyler, who uses she, her, hers pronouns, has been a vegan since 1998 and is the executive director of Peace Advocacy Network. She has a PhD in sociology, advanced certification in community leadership, is a master certified vegan lifestyle coach and educator, and is certified in plant-based nutrition. Deanna is the founder of An Everyday Vegan, a lifestyle website, and the Philly Vegan Food Tour. Deanna's personal mission is to make the world a better place, one meal at a time. Welcome, Deanna.
Thank you. I'm so honored to share this space with all these amazing women.
Awesome. And thank you all for making it happen today. And thank you everyone for attending. As a reminder, and just as a message for folks who just recently joined, we are recording. So we wanted to let everyone know that again as well. And I also just want to add too, we have had the pleasure of connecting either with all the panelists individually for events and organizations before, or the organizations that they represent. So it's nice to have also everyone together in one Zoom place right now too for this collaborative event. And thank you for all the related organizations involved tonight. We really appreciate that. We will be going now into questions for the panelists. And for the first question, we're going to go in a specific order. After that, it will be more free flow. And then we'll have individual questions for specific panelists as well. So the order for the first question, we can definitely repeat that or put in the chat too as helpful, is Jodi, Aimee, Naijha, Deanna, Nina, and Stephanie. And so the first question is, how do you view the connection or parallel of veganism?
Are you running right now? So just approve it and put it over there tonight? Okay.
Yeah, I'm gonna go home to them.
Problem. So I'll go through the question again. And I just wanted to say too that for any of the questions that we asked, if a panelist doesn't have a particular response, that's of course okay. So totally fine to pass on the question too. But our first question is, how do you view the connection or parallel of veganism, animal rights, and animal rights advocacy, and feminism and women's advocacy? And the order again is Jodi, Aimee, Naijha, Deanna, Nina, and Stephanie.
Great. Thanks for the questions, John. I think when I saw when I hear that question, there are many ways that I perceive it, but I think one of the ways that pops up for me is the obviousness of the situation. And what I mean by that is it's really obvious that animals matter. They are living, breathing beings. And as such, they should be treated with love and compassion. And of course, the same applies to women. We are living, breathing, fabulous beings, and we should be treated with love and compassion. So it's so obvious that that we should all living beings should be treated with love and compassion. So for me, that's one of the parallels.
Yeah, I agree completely with Jodi. I think early in my journey, when I first became vegan, I was part of a vegan book club. And one of the books that we read was The Sexual Politics of Meat. And it was just completely mind-blowing to me at the time. And just thinking about, we always talk about, when we're wanting to appeal to feminists, we talk about dairy and how the female cows are treated and how they're commodified and how, women face that same kind of struggle in the daily life because they are commodified for how they look. So I think, there's a huge connection there. The problem is trying to get everybody to make that connection. Like I said, it took The Sexual Politics of Meat to get me to make that connection. But I don't know that everybody's going to be willing to read that.
I'm with Aimee. When you're looking at the parallel, women in general are just compassionate beings. And when you're looking at what's going on with the chicken and the eggs and the dairy and the cows and the babies being taken, the calves being taken away from the mother cows and all of that type of stuff. Of course, you're going to feel a level of compassion if you're in the movement. So that's the parallel there. We need to be educating people on this issue. And I wouldn't expect, even though, you know, we talk about the cisgender men involved or leading the charge, but I wouldn't really expect them to really understand when they look at women in general as an object to do whatever they will with them. So when you're looking at an animal, it's the same thing. So it is a fight that we really need to be engaged with, involved with, and educating others about. So that is the parallel. You know, our compassion has to win this.
I fully agree. I have long considered myself an ecofeminist, which really connects how we treat ourselves with how we treat nature, how we treat each other with how we treat nature. And so the connection is just automatic for me because I always look at that piece of it. I'd also like to add, for me, another piece of it is that, you know, women in our modern animal agriculture system are devalued in addition to the animals that are devalued. And I bring that up because we rarely talk about the workers in this field that have to do things that they probably would prefer not to. And then on top of that, we're seeing a lot of national discourse right now about taking autonomy away from women and their reproductive rights. And we do that with animals all the time. And so as an ecofeminist, I see those two things very closely aligned and just part of, you know, thinking for me because it's always been so prominent.
I think for me, like the issues like align so easily because they're both kind of born out of movements that are created out of a resistance to society's tendency to exclude some individuals from certain rights and freedoms just simply based on their appearance. And when we view the individual as who they are, as their sole being, who is simply inherently worthy of love and belonging because they exist on the earth, then we naturally will treat them with love and make space for them. And the barrier to this is that we kind of overvalue like physical appearance as an indicator of worthiness. And that is like the appearance of women, the appearance of animals. And like, if we can look at the soul of the individual first and not all of those other details, you know, and level the playing field that way, you know, that's how I see it, is just expanding that circle.
And I think what I would even add to that from the rest of the group who's really covered the topic so well is that I think sometimes the reason we see either sometimes the disconnect or people have trouble kind of finding that common ground is because there's a lot of like traditions, there's a lot of values and roles that we tend to pass on and pass generation to generation down. And when we do that, sometimes what it does is it kind of fools us into, you know, misunderstanding what happens to groups that are oppressed. You know, we sometimes even start to put these like weird values and kind of make like one oppression better than or worse than, and we just get it all mixed up because, you know, some of these things we've learned even as children. And I think as we're trying to change the world, we have to start to look through a different lens. And we have to stop putting people in groups or putting animals in groups. We really have to say that we're going to stop oppression, aggression, violence, objectification for all. You know, it's kind of like it's universal. And when we see it as that universal truth, that universal change, the idea is that whether you're an ambassador for women's rights or an ambassador for animals' rights, the idea is that you never want to leave anyone behind in the movement and what you're doing. So I think there's just some natural synergies as we all move forward in realizing that if we're building a movement that's going to have that lasting change, we must work together so that no one is oppressed moving forward.
Thank you all. I'm loving this discussion. For the next question, as women and as leaders in the animal rights movement, what unique challenges have you had to address or overcome? And the order is Nina, Aimee, Stephanie, Naijha, Deanna, and Jodi.
It's a great question. So speaking to my own experience here, which many here may relate to, but for me as a woman to become a leader in animal rights and in general, I have been challenged with overcoming my own conditioning. I've been conditioned to be a follower since I was young in many arenas of my life, school and work and home, the media. And having the desire to speak out and to guide others is like a beautiful instinct, but I've been met with a lot of resistance from others and from my own self-doubt. Jumping a hurdle is easier when everyone is encouraging you to go for it and that you can do it. But what if, like, I went to say, I want to jump that hurdle, and everybody said, oh, are you sure you want to do that? Or it's not your purpose to jump the hurdle, or you're not supposed to jump. And depending on how much that sentiment is repeated in your life, you can start to believe that it's true. And when you eventually decide that you are going to jump, then you've created an extra hurdle to overcome in the first place, which is the one of your own self-doubt. So that's been my challenge.
Yeah, to kind of build on what Nina said, it's self-doubt for me as well. I'm a very introverted person. So putting myself out there was challenging at first, going to my first meeting at HAP and figuring out what I wanted to do, and then raising my hand and volunteering to do things and actually speaking up was a big hurdle for me. And I think that's a big hurdle for a lot of people just getting involved in any kind of movement, is you don't really know exactly where you're going to fit in. So it's important to kind of take your time and figure out where you can fit it. And I think finding supportive people that, don't necessarily think exactly like you, but understand where you're coming from and have the same kind of beliefs really helps. So I think, as far as being a woman, I haven't really noticed a lot of, in my particular role, pushback. I have noticed that, of course, all of the cisgender men are the ones that get the attention when it comes to the vegan movement. We have people like Earthling Ed and all of those other people that get all of the attention via social media. And not that that's wrong, but I think it's very interesting that we're getting more and more women who are speaking up. It's a small amount of voices right now, but I think it's growing. And there's no reason it shouldn't be, because honestly, the majority of people who are vegans are women. And that's not to say that men shouldn't be vegan, of course, but we do have a large presence in the vegan community, and there's no reason why our voices can't be front and center.
Absolutely. And I think it's also, it's interesting as an activist at times, at least when I even talk about and think about my own personal journey, is, what does that look like? Like how to be an activist? Because, there are some traditional roles that we're all familiar with. We see some specific organizations and what they do, and we can say, okay, I know how to show up for that protest, or, yep, I can knock on doors, or I can write letters. But I think one of the challenges that I faced as we talk about some of these personal journeys that we've all been on is me finding my place where I can best impact the movement. Because I know not everyone out there, maybe some of you that are listening today, you're not the person that can write letters or knock on doors for all types of reasons, not because you might want to, but you just can't because you have other responsibilities and things going on. And I think one of the hardest things about, taking that leap to leadership is making sure you find a role and a place that works for you. It works, that it nurtures you so you can nurture the community. So you keep that kind of flow going back and forth. Because sometimes I think we can put ourselves into boxes and we can say, well, I have to look like this to be an activist. I have to look like this to be a leader. And those things can hold us back. And that's something that I had to personally walk through and realize that, maybe my contribution is going to look a little different, and be comfortable with that and understand that there's so many different roles for all of us in this movement as we, step up to be leaders.
I'm muted. Mine is a little different. So I co-own the Land of Kush Vegan Soul Bistro with my husband, and he he, with the Land of Kush brand, it was all Greg, even though I stood behind the marketing and the branding and the PR and all of that other stuff. So when I came out and started creating events or co-creating events like Vegan Soul Fest, Baltimore Vegan Restaurant Week, automatically people would assume it's Greg. No, I had to really step out. It's me, and it may be me and other women. So that was a unique challenge. The assumption that a man, it has to be a man that's doing this big thing. No, it's not. It's a woman, or it's a group of women. So that was a challenge that I went through definitely on the Vegan Soul Fest project. My partner Brenda Sanders can speak to that as well. People automatically assumed it was, Greg or a man behind that, but no, it was women. And I think the Baltimore Business Journal's Women of Excellence really proves and spoke volumes as the impact that I've made in the community based on all the events that I've created or co-created, and just the presence that I've made in this community. So just fighting that fight, like, it's me, it's not a man, it's me.
Absolutely. And unfortunately for me, I've actually witnessed women being actively devalued in the movement, being asked to take on traditional female roles over leadership roles, and then that not being valued. I have a habit, good or bad, of stepping back from organizations that do that and choosing other paths, because I get very frustrated by that, right? I don't want it to happen to me. I don't want it to happen to anybody, nobody. And so part of that for me is, for my own challenges, is trying to bring it to attention kindly and giving others the space to learn and grow in it. And sometimes they are willing to do so, and sometimes they're not. And so it's, a series of patient interactions for me, just like with veganism, right? Sometimes it's a series of patient interactions with others as they learn and grow into what's best for them, and recognizing what's best for the world around them. And then the other piece of this is consistently seeing men not necessarily value the caretaking roles that women typically take in their own lives, and how that impacts their availability for the movement. And saying, well, that person's just not busy, or that person's just too busy, they had a kid or whatever. So I'm just going to stand up and take the lead. And that's not fair either. That doesn't help the movement grow and become what it can be.
For me, I have always been a people pleaser, I think, since the day I was born. So it is really challenging for me to speak up and to go against the norm and to speak my truth in a room where other people don't agree with me. So that is a challenge, and it's something I face, but I feel like I get stronger every day because of how important the movement is to me. And then I think about the reason, how I became vegan, which is that I heard other people talking, and I listened, and I was educated. And once I knew what I now know, I have no choice. I have to be vegan. So then I realized I need to speak my truth, and I need to not be afraid. And if someone doesn't like me because I spoke my truth, then that's on them. It's not on me. And the people who are open to hearing will hear and will listen and make the change. So it's something I grapple with, but I believe I get stronger every day.
Thanks for sharing those answers. That's just wonderfully said. Does anyone have anything else they'd like to add? Anyone else wants to someone said something that was very moving or meaningful, this can be informal. So if anyone wants to add anything before we move on to a next question, please say something.
I'd just love to add how beautiful it is to see all of us share these challenging moments, because we typically don't. We're typically not asked about them, and we can find community in that and opportunity to change things when we know we're not the only ones. So thank you all.
Absolutely. I 100% agree. This is great.
Yeah, I very much appreciate those perspectives. They're very important. The next question is somewhat along those lines. So, caring about animals has traditionally been perceived as something those who identify as women are thinking about, and yet many of the most known voices in the animal rights movement are cisgender men. What do you feel are the next steps for the animal rights and vegan movement to no longer be divided along those gender lines, if that's the correct word I'm looking for? And in addition to that, if you have anything to add as far as the dimensions of race and ethnicity and how that interconnects, free to add that.
As well as spirituality.
So the order, let's go Stephanie, Deanna, Aimee, and then we will do Jodi, Nina, and Naijha.
So I guess the first thing that comes to mind for me when I think about that, I think about these different roles, is number one, I think there's an opportunity for many of us to lift each other up. I think a lot of times we think about, what we have to do and get done, but I think there's so much opportunity for more collaboration. There's more opportunity that we can share each other's content to help each other get that visibility. Even though, maybe some of us don't have a gazillion followers, but every person sharing allows that person that you align with, the other women leaders, even here on today's session, or other people that you support, for them to shine. And I think we have to sometimes make a specific effort to make that happen. It doesn't just naturally happen. I think it needs to be something that's so important for all of us. And also making sure that diverse voices are being heard, because I don't think it's just a gender line that we're looking at here. I think there's an opportunity for voices to be heard that have different perspectives, that are maybe coming towards veganism for different purposes and different reasons, and also might be at different crossroads in their journey, and not looking down on those groups or looking down on individuals and so forth, because maybe there are some things that culturally are tied to their decisions and why they move forward. So I really think there's an opportunity for us to not just take a little bit more of that positive road, but be proactive, and also make sure that we're not dividing the movement. Instead, we're pulling the movement together. And not that we all have to be best friends, because not all of us agree on everything. That's not what I'm saying. But the people that you do agree with, lift them up.
I absolutely agree. I think, for next steps, we have to be willing to recognize that we have obstacles, because not everyone is. So the first step is, that recognition of obstacles. And then the second part is we need to help women recognize their own personal value in the movement and their own personal value in the conversation. Many of us are taught from an early age to be quiet, to take up less space. And that means that when it comes time to step up, we don't know how, and we're very uncomfortable with it. And so we have to be willing to have patience with one another, and men too, cis men, because, their natural inclination oftentimes is to just jump in and take lead. And that's not necessarily fair to all the other people who might be less comfortable with it. And so, if we can continue to lift each other up and help each other learn and grow, and it doesn't have to be giant steps, it can be small steps along the way until someone is comfortable taking a bigger role. And I think that's why we see a lot of cis men take those, be the ones in the forefront that are just more comfortable with it. And so we need to do, myself included, a better job of helping one another be more comfortable in these spaces and have these conversations.
Yeah, I agree completely with Stephanie and Deanna. We need to raise our voices. I mean, again, it is a very male dominated area, and those are the voices that we most hear. But then, when a female voice, just as an example, because, she has a huge following and she's very vocal about her veganism, but Billie Eilish, when she talks about veganism, she's reaching a huge amount of people. And, who knows how many people are actually reconsidering their diets because of that. I am not saying we all have to be Billie Eilish and get out there on social media and be pounding away, but the collaboration is definitely part of it, because I know, Humane Action Pittsburgh, we're a small organization, we're a regional organization, but we do work with some other organizations across the state and across the country, and have reached out to them for assistance. We reached out to one of the groups in New York about their foie gras ban that they put in place because we wanted to do it here. And I think building those connections and having those, collaborations is gonna raise all of our voices.
Well, I certainly agree with everything you have all said. And it's exactly what I was going to say, that if we collectively lift each other up, we can't be ignored. We're going to be too powerful for people to ignore us. And I think the other issue of diversity is incredibly important. And I have been reading more about the studies that are showing that diversity leads to increased creativity, increased innovation. It's positively linked to economic growth. I mean, we can talk for hours and hours about this. So that also has to be addressed. And as we are lifting each other up, to make sure that we're lifting other women up, and that we are lifting the diverse women up so that they can be recognized as well. And I think it's an incredible opportunity. I mean, I want to, acknowledge Stephanie, who spoke, I think it was last year, for Jewish Veg. So she gave of her time to come and help our organization spread our message. And that's a beautiful gift that she gave us. And so the more we can do that for each other, the more we're going to grow, and the more we will be listened to.
I agree with everything everyone said here. It was so eloquently said. I think that when anyone speaks out for animals, including cisgender men, I think it's an amazing thing. And I don't want to discourage anyone from speaking out simply because they are a cisgender man. And I think it's a brave thing, because, being an animal rights advocate requires you to show a lot of vulnerability for how you feel compassionate towards animals, which can be difficult, especially if you're raised with a lot of toxic masculinity. So, I think that's a great thing. I don't want to discourage that. But what I would say about the division along, the gender lines is to encourage, cisgender men to use their platforms to elevate and advocate for the voices of women in the animal rights movement, just as they do for animals, to invite and encourage and respect the input and leadership of women, to stand behind and beside them. It will only make the movement stronger from within. And to try not to have the mentality that women are going to replace your relevance. I think that's a challenge sometimes. And as a woman, I think for myself, I try to challenge myself. For example, when I get triggered by something somebody might have said, maybe it's cisgender man said something and I'm triggered. I try to remember that sometimes my perception of what happens is not always the truth of, or the indication of the truth of what was said or intended, and try to be understanding of what that person may have been, their intentions may have been. I think to be forgiving and understanding, and realize we're all growing and learning how to do this. We all have our own journeys towards this, and to try to view each other as friends and not enemies. It's real easy if we're triggered to put people on the enemy side or to feel like you have to put your guard up. And, so trying to be aware of my own triggers around, what somebody might say or how somebody might act is something that I feel like I try to challenge myself with. Because if, like Stephanie was saying about the dividing lines, the more that we divide the movement, the really who's going to suffer at the end of it, the animals are going to suffer. So we want to try and bridge those gaps in understanding and try to spread as much love around and, understand each other. But yeah, definitely elevating each other and empowering each other and just speaking. Like every time I see another woman speaking up, it gives me permission to speak up. We all empower each other just by speaking, so that in itself is a powerful thing.
Wow, I'm living in a whole nother world in this vegan space. So I'm gonna give it to you, straight. In my world, I'm looking at prominent Black vegan women that are speaking. I don't know some of these male men that you're talking about. I mean, Tracy McQuarter, I listen to a lot. She's pushing the 10 million Black vegan women. So when we're asking the question about how do we stop the gender divide and even the racial divide. I mean, from the gender divide, the men need to be listening to us. Shut up and listen, do what we're doing here now, right? Sean, Christopher, give us the platform to speak if you're dominant in that space. But again, in my world, it's a little different because the vegan man that I'm listening to right now is Ralph Smart of Infinite Waters. And he's not even really talking about a lot about animal rights. He's just talking about 7-day vegan challenge. So that's who I'm listening to. I'm more drawn to our Black women and now looking at Latino women in the movement. And I think we have to look and respect different multicultural perspectives in this space. Don't throw this thing down my throat about, and you have to say you're vegan for the animals. I don't have to say anything. I'm vegan. You know what I'm saying? So let's think in those terms and regards. We're vegan. We're dealing with different cultures. If you want to, close the gap there, understand the culture that you're dealing with first. Don't come in with the colonizer mindset, because that's where you're going to lose us, period. End of story. So to close that gap, come in with an open mind, understand you're dealing with different cultures, we're doing different things, and just listen and understand and just be in that space and don't make any judgments.
So appreciate the range of perspectives. I think this is such an awesome discussion and inspiring one. So I just want to name that. And if there's any further reflections on this question, definitely happy to engage in that. We also have a few more individual questions, time permitting too. I know there was a question or two in the chat, but yeah.
The only thing I would add, and I think Naijha's getting me all fired up over here, is, actively follow other voices. I think we talk about like social media, but actively subscribe. If someone has a podcast, sign up for it. You know what I mean? Go to Naijha's website and sign up for it, because you won't hear these voices unless you sign up and they start coming in your feed. They're coming in your email. I don't want people to think like, yeah, I'm open. Of course I'm open. But if your email, if your social media feed does not have diverse voices, then you haven't done the job yet. You really should be looking at your feed. And if you're not seeing individuals with different culture, different foods, then you have some work to do. And I think there's an opportunity to make that change, because for most of us, we can bring the right content to us to help us change, but you can't make that happen unless you take that step and make sure that you're following people like Tracy McQuarter, making sure that you're really diving in and understanding what other voices are talking about in the movement so that you can educate your audience on what's happening across the movement. Because otherwise you can only educate in the world you know. And if you don't make your world any larger, it is very difficult for you to educate and really help everyone move forward.
If I can add to that, I think that's such an important point, Stephanie, because I know for myself, and like I'm sure all of you get a lot of emails, right? I mean, 5 different email addresses, I get all the emails. And I recently had to take a look at my inbox because I want to follow, so many more people in the vegan space. But then I say to myself, oh, I don't have time because I'm already following all of these people and I just can't handle any more. And then I had to realize I had to go in and unsubscribe from some people because I do want to hear more of the diverse voices and more of, more of the vegan voices who are out there, either vegan for the animals, vegan for health, vegan for climate, whatever the reason is. And I want to hear what they have to say. And if I use the excuse, I'm too busy, no, I have to relook at what my priority is and make that shift. And it takes time and energy and effort, but it is really, really worth it.
Definitely, I cannot agree more, to say the absolute least. Wondering, in terms of transitioning to individual questions, we'll also continue to share information in the chat, different links that are coming through. For folks who registered, obviously including everyone here tonight, we'll try to get those links out over email as well as have the video from tonight up pretty shortly. We had some individual questions in mind we wanted to check in with folks about, time permitting. And so Jodi, we have a question specifically for you, but other folks, can feel free to answer any of these individual questions too as possible. But this question is, the vegan Jewish community is growing. What has aided this progress? And then what are the obstacles to further growth that others can help reshape?
Thank you for that great question. I think it is organizations like Jewish Veg that have brought individuals who identify as Jewish and as vegan together to both honor their faith and their ethical and moral beliefs. And the executive director, Jeffrey Spitz-Cohan, is here. And I was sitting at my desk almost 3 years ago. I do health coaching work, and I got an email because I did subscribe to Jewish Veg that said they were looking to hire someone in New York City. And I thought, wait a minute, like I have an opportunity to work for an organization that is bringing my Jewish and vegan values together. And then I get to use my voice to educate others to do that. I want to be a part of that. Like, yes, I literally stopped what I was doing and sent my resume. So I think it is such a blessing to have an organization like Jewish Veg that does that marries those two, those values together. And then we work, to create regional communities and national and global community so that people feel comfortable coming together to express themselves as Jews and as vegans. And I think religion and our holidays are centered around food. And so much of that food is meat. And if it's not meat, then it's a dairy holiday. So it is a challenge to educate people and say, no, the Jewish ideal is actually a plant-based lifestyle. So it's challenging to change people's mind, but the good thing is we do have the Torah and our sages on our side. It is a Jewish ideal to lead a plant-based lifestyle. So it's challenging, but we have the knowledge to do it, to share that. So and we do love to bring people together. We do have a Seder coming up, which is a Seder on Zoom for Passover. I'll put the link in the chat after. And you're invited to attend, and you don't have to be Jewish because we pride ourselves on working with interfaith communities as well, because we are all in this together. We have one planet here. And so we want to share our values with Jews and of course with people of other faiths.
Thanks so much, Jodi, and we look forward to the link as well for the upcoming event. Just sharing your perspective.
Yeah, thank you so much. That really resonates with me as well. I'm also Jewish, and it's been a lot of fun to incorporate Judaism into my veganism as well. And I think it's actually made it stronger and it's helped me to have ways to communicate with other people in the community also. So this is a question for Stephanie. There are many vegan women in the private sector that long to connect their work with their passion for helping animals, but who have careers that are not directly vegan focused. What do you recommend to these amazing people to be involved in vegan advocacy?
So I think there's a couple of different ways to approach it. Number one, I think the impact that we can make for animals is not always just directly in the food sector, in a sense. It's not always directly in sometimes the areas that you think about, because our ecosystem, our capitalistic society, just the way we work, there's so many decisions that are made along the way that harm animals. Some of it's around the packaging that people are putting together. It's how they source items. It's even down to some ways that, you know, organizations and businesses even treat their employees. We are really not just, we're trying to bring this kind of compassionate kind of consciousness to people. So I often tell people that don't get too, you know, in a bind of, am I doing something for food? Because what can happen is you could put yourself in a place that you may not excel in. You can put yourself in a place that's not your strength. You know, I talk to a lot of people when I'm coaching them on building businesses, and a lot of people are like, well, I guess I'll just be a health coach, or I guess I'll just, you know, I'll cook. And I'm like, do you like cooking? And I'm like, not so much, but I want to help the animals. And what happens is they kind of get into a space where they really aren't able to use what they know and can do. So if you're a lawyer, help us change laws. That makes a huge difference. If you're an accountant, help us make sound financial decisions. Help an organization stay in business because they can have visibility to their P&L, because they can understand the financial side of their business, because they may not have that background. So it's interesting the way that we can make impact. And sometimes that impact is even outside of our direct career. And I'll use an example for me where, you know, I'm very corporate. I came from a corporate background, but I also came from an entrepreneurial family. So I have a very, you know, business background and all that good stuff. And I can also tell you some of the challenges of being a woman in corporate America. And some of the stuff we, you know, I didn't talk about today, but others have talked about, you know, being in a room where, you know, I should get the coffee and the cupcakes instead of do the presentation. You know, I've experienced all that. But one thing that I've also taken away from that journey is understanding that your voice can matter in so many different ways that you never expected. So while I do a lot on the business side and I do a lot on building businesses, the most amazing thing that happened to me in really for my activism is I got the opportunity to be on the board for Veg Fund. Was I thinking about it? Was I planning to do it? Wasn't really on my radar, but someone called and said, hey, would you be interested? And I'm so fortunate that someone thought of me. And even when I stepped in, I was like, I don't know what I'm supposed to be doing on the board. I was very lost. And, you know, like I knew corporate, but I didn't know how really boards ran because that was my first time. And what happened is over time, I took on more leadership. I took on more opportunities where now I'm the chairperson of the board. You know, I'm now in the place where I can help shape decisions. I'm in a place where I can help, you know, think about how we do things differently. And I bring that up to say, sometimes your opportunity isn't always the opportunity you see in front of you. Sometimes that opportunity is career. Sometimes it's starting a business. And sometimes it's taking your skills, because a lot of what I even help Veg Fund with is sometimes the marketing acumen. Sometimes I'm talking about how we're going to do fundraising. How do we, you know, build it? So it's an amazing place when you kind of put down some of the barriers that we put in front of ourselves when we're trying to decide how do we become amazing advocates and activists out there, that there's like a highway full of lanes ahead of you, I guess would be one thing I want people to take away today. So try different things, step into different roles, jump on a board, because you may be surprised that you'll get not only so much exposure, so much ability to help people. And also I've met so many amazing people because of it. So I just want to encourage people to not feel like it has to be one way forward. There's just so many ways to help animals, help the world, because unfortunately our habits, the way a lot of things, not everything, but a lot of things happen in this world hurt animals. And if we just make changes along the way, we will change animals' lives, we will change our lives, we will save the planet.
Thanks so much, Stephanie. Appreciate all those perspectives.
Yeah, very, very powerful. Thank you. My next question, or our next question, is for Nina. So Christianity is the dominant U.S. religion, but some denominations are more open to exploring animal rights compared to others. How is the Christian Animal Rights Association bridging the issue across denominations?
Thank you for that question. So actually our plan over the next couple of years is to reach out to every single church in America and let them know that we are here and invite them to discuss our mission and get involved if they feel called to. Yes, there are an overwhelming number of different denominations in the Christian umbrella. And within those individual denominations, there are individual congregations, and then there's individual people. And so like, my concern is not so much just to bring about like a whole church denomination into the fold, as much as to convince individual Christians to, realize that animals deserve the right to live. And I think that one human can change the mind of another. And if the chain continues, you can convince a whole church to care for your mission. And, as a Christian, the Bible actually has an easy argument to make for veganism. Like right from the beginning in Genesis 1:29, God told Adam and Eve to eat only plants. It was, from the start. So, arguably it can sometimes be an easier argument to make than feminism in Christianity, unfortunately, sometimes. So, there are a lot of bridges to gap. There are definitely some more open-minded and progressive denominations, and more open or less open-minded and more conservative denominations. And compassion, I believe, is a universal human trait. And I think that as a Christian, if you're following Jesus' example of compassion and humility, like naturally that leads to the choice to stop torturing animals for your food. I think it's the human ego and pride and fear that get in the way of us making that choice. So I like to believe and hope that one day all Christians will be vegan as a natural progression. And of course we are, hoping that's the case for all of humanity as well, and all different walks of faith or not. And we also are extremely inviting, collaborative of all kinds of interfaith panels, and happy to see Jodi and Jeff here. Of course, and we've collaborated before. It's a beautiful thing to work in as an interfaith group, and just to see different people from different backgrounds finding common ground and working towards a mission. So
it's awesome, including around the interfaith collaboration and the focus on living out values of compassion. Really appreciate that a lot. Actually, it's in a transition. Put a link in the chat regarding compassionate living campaigns from HAP, or Humane Action Pittsburgh. And our next question is for Aimee. HAP does Humane Action Pittsburgh, or HAP, does a lot of outreach and work with those in government regarding humane legislation. What do you recommend to others for successful outreach to make our world better, particularly for animals?
That's actually probably one of the easiest ways to get involved with our organization, or for any organization. We send out action items with our newsletters every month, where we ask people to call or write to their local legislators if there's a particular bill that maybe needs co-sponsored, or needs a couple more votes to push it through. And as I said, it's an easy thing to do. It's not always, it can be kind of nerve-wracking, especially for people who are not used to it. But it just involves calling. You'll get an aide to the legislator, and they will take notes on what you say. And then at the end of the week, or even the end of the month, usually what they do is they collate everything together. And if there happens to be an issue, there have been studies shown that, usually 10 is about the threshold. If they see that they've gotten 10 calls in a week about a specific issue, they'll consider it. and it'll be on their radar. So we have had some success. We've had, some local politicians help co-sponsor bills with us. We've worked with lawyers and legislators to write legislation. We actually, just this past month or so, the first puppy mill bill was introduced in the Pennsylvania legislature, and we had a huge hand in creating that legislation and working with our legislators to make sure that it is something that could be passed through. Now, whether it does or not, that's another question, because we're talking about politics, and it does come down to politics. But speaking of using your voices, citizens can use their voices on matters that matter to them. And these legislators work for you. Use your voice to give them your position and say, this is why I feel this way. And this is why I think you should support this bill or this action.
Thanks, Aimee. I love hearing about the ways that folks can get involved and the impacts that that can have. And it's good to kind of diffuse the mystery around it and just make it clear about how that impact can work. Next question, this is for Naijha. You balance Black Veg Society, the needs of Land of Kush, multiple speaking opportunities, and a family among other experiences. Please share how you make all this good, meaningful work possible for those of us wanting to do more who may be anxious about staying balanced.
One day at a time. That's how you do it. One day at a time. And, the Black Veg Society was birthed out of Land of Kush. So let's just start there. It was a simple Facebook page that a customer was trying to gift us when we started the restaurant. And we took it on in the third year of business because Vegan Soul Fest was out. And then it just evolved into what it is today, mostly creating events, webinars, and things like that. So I don't try to make things too complicated. And I think in terms of business to business, individual to business, and business to business, because Land of Kush is a business. We're in the community. And when we talked about lifting people up, we're lifting individuals up, we're lifting businesses up, because if the businesses win, we all win, because the businesses have the greatest impact to individuals, because guess what? We all got to eat. What's the one thing everyone did during COVID is eat, right? You're going to eat. So we just all have to work together. So I try to make my job easy by making things interrelated. So I'm tackling one thing, but it's getting to multiple things at the same time. We just talked about this with the Zoom, right? Zooming to live, using your resources to amplify everything that you do. And I'm always thinking about that when I'm working on stuff. Now, when it comes to family life and children and daughters, I carve out time in my calendar for that. So I don't care what's going on in the vegan world. I don't care. When it's in the schedule for family, it's family. Don't call me about anything. I don't want to talk about anything about that. I'm dealing with my family. And you have to carve out that time for you too. I'm sorry, that's the reality. Because if you're not mentally, emotionally, spiritually, physically well, you're not helping anybody in the community. All you're going to do is be angry, nasty, and that doesn't hurt. That doesn't help anyone either. So make sure you're carving out time for you. And that's all I'm going to say about that. That's how you balance that. Make time for you. Nothing is more important than you. I'm sorry I said it. Carve out time for you.
I think that's a great point. That's awesome. So our next question is for Deanna. Peace Advocacy Network has done such impactful, meaningful work by providing mentoring support to individuals newer to and curious about veganism. Which elements are most important in the effectiveness of your work regarding diversity, equity, and inclusion? And in which ways do you provide support to mentees and animal rights advocates overall?
A big question with a bit of a smaller answer, in the sense that we start from a space of social justice. It is part of our mission. So we're blunt about it. And we make it very clear. There's this current reckoning in the AR movement about the fact that we have pushed certain people to the periphery, women, Black, Indigenous people, the global majority, these things, but PAN has always had social justice as part of our mission. And we play that out in various ways, such as always lifting up all people, making sure that people see themselves in leadership roles. So we bring in speakers from all backgrounds. Always, we keep an eye on it. Every time we create a program, it's important to us. We, because of this, we think that because of this, we're able to attract a disproportionate number of Black, Indigenous, and people from the global majority into our programming and into our organization. And it's something that we are so proud of. Even our board is very diverse, and that's something that a lot of nonprofit boards struggle with. So we start from that space of social justice, and we just really emphasize it and push it forward. On top of that, we are all constantly addressing our own interaction with white supremacy culture and how that shapes our interactions with one another and others, and trying to change that. We consistently talk about all of the isms in our Vegan Pledge program and our Vegan Activist Academy. We connect speciesism with racism, with sexism, with ageism, with ableism, with all of the isms, and we put it on the table, and we know that it can make some people uncomfortable, and we're okay with that. It's okay for us to be uncomfortable sometimes. That's how we learn and grow. For our Activist Academy, we have a whole section dedicated to racial equity in the movement, and we talk about these important issues, because if we don't talk about them, nothing's going to change. That's our philosophy, and that's how we approach all of it. So that's a big question with a smaller answer, and so much other stuff happens in there, but it's definitely important to us every day.
Christina, so appreciate how all of PAN's programming and work is guided by social justice, as you shared, and appreciated being involved in the pledge programming and other programs too, and in PBS and PAN collaborated last summer. Appreciate that as well. Oh, awesome. So the audience, yes, participating in the Academy now, which is great. And we also put a link into the chat to for an upcoming PAN event later in April. Yeah, well, we wanted to, we realized we're getting close to time of 9:15. And we wanted to kind of check in too, if there were any other reflections folks are having as we start to wind down this really meaningful event. I truly feel inspired and energized and grateful to all the panelists and everyone who was attended. So thank you so much. Just wanted to share that too. Any other reflections or questions or events or updates folks would like to share or on the panel?
No, we have upcoming events. Vegan Soulfest is coming back after 2 years of not being able to organize because of the pandemic. Please, blackvegsociety.org. We appreciate your support. One thing that Black Veg Society does, it's not just about us. We also support other smaller community events. So I like it when our funders and supporters say Black Veg Society shares, they share with others, because that is a real statement. When we get money in, it's just not us. I have communities that are doing things and people aren't funding them, or they're having a hard time. We spend time, energy, and money helping to build and grow them. So any support that people provide us, it doesn't just go to us, it goes to the community. We're talking about not just Baltimore, I'm talking about Richmond, I'm talking about New York, I'm talking about Texas. You know, this is the support that we provide within our community, in those communities as well. So funding is definitely important for us. I don't get paid as an executive director like some executive directors. I don't get paid anything right now. So I'm doing this on my own time. So just so people know the perspective of how I'm operating. And if I did take a salary, it would be a fraction of what I'm really worth. So I'm just being transparent.
Appreciate that transparency and all that you do. for communities.
I wanted to share also with Jewish Veg that we do have chapters in New York City, Washington, D.C., Los Angeles, and the Bay Area. So if you have Jewish vegan friends in those communities, I'll put my email address in the chat in a moment, and please have them contact me because I'd love to connect them with the individuals in those areas, in those chapters, and that's the way that we will be able to grow and share our message. Thank you, Jeff.
We always have so many events coming up. If anyone is curious, we post them on all of our social media spaces, and our website has our Vegan Pledge program. It's a 30-day free program that helps people go vegan with tremendous amount of support. Most pledges don't do that. So we have meetings, everyone gets mentors, coupons, cookbooks. We bring in chefs, we bring in a doctor or a dietitian to come and talk about health. We talk about ethics, we talk about the environment. We have panel discussions, and all of this is completely free for anyone who is not yet vegan or very early in their journey. And those of us who are already vegan, we're always looking for volunteer mentors to support these amazing people changing their lives. And now we have the Vegan Activist Academy. So we're helping people learn to be better advocates and activists within their own community. We make no assumptions about what's needed in their community or what the culture is indicating. And those, that's also an incredible program that we're so proud of launching this year. And, Sean was kind enough to already put in the chat one of our upcoming panel discussions. We always have great stuff coming up. And the other thing I wanted to share is a question that was asked sort of behind the scenes, not today yet. And that is, what are our suggestions for others to grow their presence? And one thing I'd love to share is grow your own self-worth, and that will help you be successful in all spaces. And one way to do that is just to sit with yourself daily and think about the things that you like about yourself and write them down. Maybe your goal is the first few months, just 3 things a day. I really value myself because of X, Y, and Z today. And just building your own self-worth can really help us all speak louder for the causes that we really care about, including animals. So I just wanted to share that.
It's really helpful. Thank you, Deanna.
Tune in to NaijhaSpeaks.com. You want a different perspective on, vegan, find your vegan soul. I had a fun time interviewing David Bronner. So it's just always a fun time. I never know what's going to come of it. So yeah, tune in to NaijhaSpeaks.com.
I would probably be remiss if I didn't mention this, but Humane Action Pittsburgh is teaming with Plant Strong, Rip Esselstyn's organization, and we are doing what we're calling Get Healthy Pittsburgh. It's a 1-week program. We're asking people to go vegan. They get screening beforehand and after. As part of the program, they get a kickoff with Rip and some other experts, and then a celebration party. So I posted the link, but I'll post it again. So anybody in Pittsburgh who would be interested in taking part of that.
Yes, you will, Deanna. Yes, you will. Deanna will be on Naijha Speaks next month. So
that was great. And I would just add, for anyone out there who is thinking about aligning their career with their activism, aligning their career with their veganism, we try to do as much as we can to support people on that journey. We offer, we have a button on our site, if you went to it, that just says free training. Literally, I do free webinars every month. I do a podcast that's just designed to be an inspirational podcast because it's a hard journey and sometimes it can feel like a lonely road out there. So we try to just support you, try to help you with the highs and lows of it. And also we try to interview people who are on that path as well. So individuals who are authors, and writing, fictional books, but bringing the vegan message forward. We're talking to people who are writing vegan musicals. It's very interesting the types of career paths that people are taking these days. And even with the pandemic, it gave people opportunities to explore different ways to use their skills. So if we can do anything to support you on that mission, I'd love, love, love to do that. And this always have to give a recommendation to leverage Veg Fund as well. Veg Fund is really a great organization to help you with a lot of your activism, to help you with hosting events. And what I really love about what Veg Fund does is, while it's done some larger organizations, it's really about helping the individual. It's really about helping you if you want to have 5 people at an event, and you're just getting started. Veg Fund in many ways can support you in your mission. So please reach out to them and jump on the website and apply for a grant.
For all these resources and events, some Pittsburgh Vegan Society information in the chat too. Are planning some further events throughout the spring, and stay tuned for our social media and our website as well. Other reflections for now, for tonight, events that we didn't, or links that we didn't get to in the chat. I apologize if I missed any throughout the way.
I just want to say, kind of going off what Deanna was saying about building your self-worth, is that, I just want to say to anybody out there, anyone who's watching, you as yourself are needed in this movement. You are needed to be you, to be yourself. I think a lot of times we compare ourselves to everybody else and we think, oh, they're doing so much better, or they know what to do, or they're like so eloquent. And we all as individuals have unique individual gifts that are needed and that are valuable. So anytime that you think that you're not valuable, one thing I do is, one of the reasons I love animals is they always just accept you for who you are. And I always think of the way that I perceive that they think of me, and that helps me to be a little more brave. So that's what I wanted to add to it.
It resonates with me a lot, Nina. Thank you.
Well, it is now 9:20, so we want to be mindful of everybody's time. Thank you, everyone, for coming out, and I've appreciated all these perspectives. They're very meaningful. As the Pittsburgh Vegan Society, our invitation is always for people to go vegan. So we're here to be a resource. And of course, we've had a lot of other people with other organizations tonight, and these other organizations are also resources. So the more resources, the better. So thank you, everyone. And also an invitation for everyone tonight to not only go vegan, but to lift up the voices of those who identify as women, and be awesome.
Thanks for having us, Sean.
Of course.
Christopher,
Thank you.
Pittsburgh Vegan Society.
Thank you all so
Yes,
much.
thank you very, very much.
Thank you.
Take good care, everyone. We hope to collaborate again in the near future.
Absolutely.
Everyone. Bye.
Thank you.
Stay
Bye,
blessed,
everyone.
everyone. Bye-bye.
Bye.